Hello, in today's video you'll see the incredible renovation of the Chateau's greenhouse. You'll see it transformed from a bare shell to a beautiful, functional and finished greenhouse. If you haven't seen last week's video, you can see the demolition of the greenhouse in that video. I was quite undecided as to how to renovate the greenhouse. It was renovated in 2016 with a corrugated polycarbonate roof. However, that roof didn't withstand the weather very well at all. Hailstones made holes in it. The wind ripped it off piece by piece. The snow was too heavy for it, and the heat of the summer sun scorched it black. The greenhouse ended up looking absolutely horrendous, and it became exposed to the elements and unusable. I always wanted to have a glass roof in the greenhouse, but thought this wouldn't be possible because of the cost and the amount of work. When considering all the options this time, I decided to have a look on a popular French website, similar to eBay, where people sell second-hand things. I thought there might be some vague chance of finding someone who had taken down a greenhouse and was selling second-hand glass, but I knew the chance of finding glass the right size and the right quantity was near on impossible. However, when I went on the website, literally within a few minutes, I came across a listing that was selling brand new toughened tempered glass for greenhouses. They were selling 20 sheets of this massive glass, which was brand new. They had built a greenhouse themselves, and obviously this glass was extra that they'd had. The size of each piece of glass was 1 metre by 1.75 metres, so that was actually an ideal size for the greenhouse here, which has a roof of 8 metres by 3.5 metres. So 2 lots of glass going down the roof and 8 across meant 16 pieces of glass, and there were 20 for sale, so that was perfect. The next day we did all the measurements and arranged to buy the glass and go and collect it. It was a bit of a trek, the journey. It was a couple of hours or more each way, and the house was impossible to find. Even the local farmer, who was next door to the house, didn't know where the house was. He told us to go the opposite direction. So we found this house in this little wooded area, and a really nice lady showed us where the glass was. It just fitted in my car, the back of my car with the seats down. It was so close, but I'd measured, and so I knew that it would fit, but it was literally taking up the whole back of the car. But it was perfect. It really was too good an opportunity to miss, and it was a good price. The cost was much less than polycarbonate, so it was a win-win. The purchase of the glass in effect dictated the whole project, because tempered glass can't be cut. Therefore, the design and the structure of the greenhouse had to be made to accommodate the glass. This meant that there was no other option but to buy all new wood and do a completely new structure. The old wood was damaged anyway, it was quite rotten and it wasn't suitable, and the size was wrong, so it all had to come down anyway. It was a much easier and just a better option aesthetically to buy new wood. All the new wood was ordered at a local wood yard. Before the construction could start, the wall had to be repaired where the beams had come out, because the old beams were set into the wall. However, it became apparent that the wall was actually in pretty bad condition, especially the top section. So it was decided that the whole hall would be repaired and repointed. Obviously, before doing this, you have to chip off all the old stuff and get rid of all the flaking, crumbling old lime mortar that's loose, clean up the wall. So there was a lot of work involved that wasn't actually anticipated in the first place of the project, because we weren't really intending to redo the wall at this point in time. As the greenhouse is 8 metres long and the wall is about 3 metres high, that meant there was 24 square metres of wall to actually repair and repoint with lime mortar. So it was quite a big job. Fortunately, Stuart did it. We were under a lot of time pressure because of the weather. It was the end of autumn, and with the winter weather coming, it was a race against time, really, to try to get it all watertight, the actual structure up and the glass in before the weather got too bad. The wall was all prepared, but Stuart only repaired and repointed about the top third of it so that the structure could go in. And obviously, once the roof was in, then he knew that he could do the rest in dry conditions. Instead of putting the beams into the wall like they were before, it was decided that we would put a beam along the top of the greenhouse wall, so that all the other beams could connect up to that instead of actually going into the wall. That was neater looking, and also it means that in time, in the future, they won't rot like the other ones did in the wall. Collecting all the wood from the wood yard was quite an interesting day. Well, I'm not sure that interesting is the right word, but it was a bit of an ordeal, quite frankly, because it was freezing cold and it was muddy at the wood yard, and we had to fit it in my small car, which, considering that the lengths of wood were 4 metres long, meant that there were 1.5 metres or more sticking out the back of the car. And so we had to have the boot half open. The wood yard's about 10 kilometres away, but due to the quantity of the wood, it only fit a certain amount in. That meant about 6 trips, which all in all took about 4 hours backwards and forwards. So it was a bit stressful. But we did it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Stuart started cutting all the pieces for the frame more or less straight away. Well, all the main parts that were required for the actual structure. He actually put the frame up temporarily just to make sure that everything was right. And then he took it down again. Because everything needed to be painted, it was just to test that it was all correct. We needed somewhere inside to paint all the pieces of the frame, because outside was not an option due to the weather. It needed to be quite a large space, because the length of the beams were 3.5 and 4 metres long. Therefore, the dining room got turned into a painting workshop. Of course, the parquet floor had to be covered to protect it. The painting was my job. Having somewhere inside meant that the painting could be done day or night. And I did have some late night painting sessions trying to get it done in time. Everything needed at least 2 coats of paint. And because it was quite cold, It was taking a while to dry. Whilst I was doing the painting, Stuart was cutting all the additional finishing pieces. He was also repairing the end of the slate roof. Fixing the beam along the wall and painting it. Cleaning up the brickwork along the front of the greenhouse. And any other jobs that needed to be done before the frame could go up. It was a long day. The sun was going down. We were cold, tired and hungry, but the glass was in. However, there was still a lot of finishing work to do, but that was for another day. You may have noticed that the end two windows weren't put in on that day. This was because the end panel was narrower than the rest, so the glass was too big. We hadn't decided what to do at that point. In the end, we decided to use the same glass and just overlap it. The next day, Stuart carried on working. There were 8 windows to make for the front of the greenhouse. He made these using the old plexiglass, but at some point it will be better to have glass in them. These windows are really a temporary solution, and as yet haven't been painted or fixed fully. The repointing of the wall also needed to be finished. The temporary wooden blocks that were helping hold things in place were then removed. And the painted wooden strips were then fixed on. These were to cover all the edges of the glass, to hold the glass in place, and to give the greenhouse an aesthetically pleasing look. I continued with painting. These are the supporting cross beams. They are to help support the glass along the middle of the roof. Also to strengthen the frame to make sure that everything is held together and stop the long beams warping. In addition, they greatly improve the look of the greenhouse. These are panels of wood to seal the gap between the glass roof and the front windows. This is them when they're finished. This is the glass roof with the cross beams in place. You can see how much better it looks. This is the wall when all the repointing was finished. Everything was finished before the snow arrived. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Like or leave me a comment. It really helps my small channel. Thanks again.